If my microphone doesn't work this time, I'm shitting myself. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good. So this is, chill stream because I realized that they added Kankri Vantas to Befriend Us. I have not played Befriend Us in a long time. I don't remember anything about previous plot points. I have no idea what the story is here, but I really wanted to read some Kankri dialogue, so we are going to read some Kankri dialogue. Yeah, um, wow. Is it great to be out of the woods, back into the suburban jungle even? By which you mean, you don't know why you said that. This is the least jungle-like terrain you've ever set foot in. Even the trees seem respectfully contained to their little dirt squares. Where were we? Out of the woods, right. Feels like a fitting phrase, that. You're starving. Feels like you haven't been fed in years. Which is obviously bullshit, because you had lunch like an hour ago. You know, with a faint air of self-satisfaction, that's usually poor sap saying it the other way around. We're not out of the woods just yet. Not you. You haven't been snapped at by a venomous vine or had to watch your steps for trigger roots for hours. Have you seen this mutant? Even the distant honey-eyed robo speech of a drone down the street can't faze you. Have you seen this mutant? Far down the block from you, the drone is busy stopping other pedestrians one at a time to show them each a flyer. Some kind of missing persons deal, maybe a manhunt. As the drone stops another group of pedestrians about a block away from you, what you can only assume to be a really complicated kind of ashen trio, holding each other's ears as they walk down the sidewalk, you crane your neck for an idle glance at the picture on the flyer. Have you seen this mutant? Have you seen this mutant? Oh, geez, that's you. One way or another, that's very much you on the flyer. They've given you this really chiseled jawline, and the illustration is hitting you with all these questions about whether you have a nose, but you would know that smiling orb anywhere. Your eyes are pulled downward toward your poor, still healing body. You'll be honest, you've only attempted a couple teleport jumps since then, and you're already in serious danger of losing your lunch. You assured Porum, of course, that you would walk it off, but you're sort of rationing your space-time leaps. After a busy night of being a good friend, you're plumb over budget. Very, very quietly, you peek around the street for some place to run. This'll do. You pick out the most middling, well-groomed house of the bunch, really the most innocuous place you could picture, and climb the steps in no hurry at all, just normal neighborly business. You run your lines in your head and put on your mail carrierly-esque smile. With your best before and mannerly precision, you knock on the door thrice. Hello, you rehearse, scrambling for what you're going to say next. Hello, I'm here to repair your mail slot. No, that's silly. Hello, can I interest you in a collection of encyclopedias? Can anyone interest anyone in a collection of encyclopedias? Oh, fuck, they're opening the door. The door pulls open only 4 inches before it's stopped by a jiggling sound and a thin length of chain, and a young man wedges his face into the resulting crack. Oh, fuck, I missed. I realize the door is unmarked, but you can presume no solicitors unless told otherwise. Just a tip. You glance casually and unanxiously over your shoulder, as if you have all the time in the world. Except you don't, actually, accomplish either of those things. Your glance is both anxious and conspicuous. Your palms are sweating. Oh, yes. You would be coming my way. Glad you could make it. I did get the memo on that. Expectations, gossip. Arguable gossip. On the other hand, if this is what qualifies as gossip, then you might as well throw out the whole friend server. But I mean, right now? I mean, seriously, great to finally make your acquaintance. We've all been following your escapades in the group chat, but abrupt appearances unannounced, showings ups, self-quote-unquote invitation. Comprehend exactly none of that. You are so sorry, but you literally could not be less interested in what this kid's deal is right now. You're kind of running for your life. Well, okay, before this isn't very murdery, but for your freedom? You're running on adrenaline, that's how you're running. You're running out of excuses to invite yourself into a stranger's home? Have you seen this mutant? You're too preoccupied to notice whether the kid's gaze follows yours down the street or not. Caught up in your hand-wringing over what to say next, you don't even hear the door moving until it's slammed in your face. And then unlatched. Watch your step. You step inside the most sterile museum of a home you have ever been in. Two plush couches invite you to sit, bracketing in a brimming bowl of candy that invites you to eat. You're besieged on all sides by soft light, and you would swear classical music is playing somewhere on synthesized, maybe string instruments. Comparing it to the chaos that has been chasing your sorry ass mere moments before feels like suddenly diving underwater to escape a swarm of bees. A lot, but nice, unharsh, manufactured least familiar, and incapable of surprises. I'm kankri vantas. Either name is acceptable, but let's stick to the basics for now. Nickname logistics, mode of address, random choice of 2 to 3 letters, on thin ice if you must. I'm sure you've seen just about I'm sure you've been just about inundated with Oh god, I forgot about his typing quirk. I'm sure you've been just about inundated with hyperbolized, genetic fear-mongering, borderline xenophobic news reels already. Who hasn't? And since you're the impacted party here, obviously, I don't want to tread on any associated feelings for any longer than necessary, so just flag me down, by the way, if we're getting too real. You understand the sensationalism of imperial propaganda, and I understand the sensationalism of imperial propaganda, so expending a couple hundred words just on bemoaning it to one of its survivors would be, I think, pretty needless. Xenophobia, imperial propaganda, mutation politics, but barely. But anyway, obviously my hive is an optionally and temporarily open space, inclusive of but not over-centering you, until such time that either you rescind your interest or I rescind the stance. That's my destandardization and intentional subversion of my hive is your hive, by the way, a standard of hospitality branded innocuous at first, but, upon further inspection, that veneer of innocuity completely falls apart. Consider, for example, the expectations placed on both the host and guest. The speaker, here in a position of social power, presumes their guest so much as wants to be considered an essential part of the space, let alone to be given it, while the listener, the one receiving the offer, has been locked out of the process of verbally defining both the space and their intentions within it. And so, our speakers snuck under the conversational radar and codified their position as giver of charity as owning a resource that, usually, without reason to think otherwise, their guest probably owns anyway and didn't need to be given veneers, invitations. And is the hive theirs? While a no means all we've done is obfuscate what could have been a straightforward, unproblematized conversation within a bare, if ultimate, meaningless reflection of foreign displays of wealth at best and culling culture at worst, frankly, what I'm far more concerned with is a willing and overeager, or even sarcastic yes, when pressed. No, one's readiness to meet even a rhetorical challenge to conventional, linguistically codified hospitality by showing their cards as totally prepared to completely and legitimately offer their hive to a stranger who, again, was trying nothing more than to meet on common ground, is, in fact, not the snappy comeback you might think it is, and is deemed best described as still pretty problematic, let alone kind of worse. Social power, conversational status, sarcasm, weaponized poorly. I hate this guy so bad, I missed him. And, in any case, it's great to finally make your acquaintance, so let's maintain the right space in which to do it. Are there any ground rules we ought to lay down? I'm sort of cosmically aware that any pronouns used for you here are just placeholders, and, if you're experienced at this kind of thing, mentally replaced upon reading. I mean listening, but we're talking boundary lines and But we're talking boundary lines. Any triggers to disclose? Needs, alien or familiar? Thank you for the fourth wall break, I appreciate it. Intro about. The emotions you're feeling right now are not unlike the ones associated with staring down a pop quiz. Your lungs are shaking. Your brain's processing everything he's just told you at about 1/10 of the pace. You're still caught up on him telling you were apparently supposed to be watching the news. You cough. No, yeah, that's really considerate of him. You think you're not really comfortable disclosing your triggers to a stranger right now? That's just your canon personal preference in this moment, and anyway, you always just peruse the #warnings menu. Thanks, though. But if he doesn't mind, you have just a teensy tiny question about all the borderline xenophobic news you've definitely been watching. Just, you know, if hypothetically you hadn't been watching the news, like just if someone somewhere hadn't, and if you wanted to explain the situation to them, oh, I'd be happy to give you a little language for the media scrutiny you're facing anytime. Actually, your instincts brought you to just the right place with that question. Unless you've been informed already, have you? That wouldn't surprise me, but I would owe a thank you and quick shout out to whichever of our mutual friends referred you my way. But anyway, that's a service I tend to offer in general language and ensuring that one is found and navigated it appropriately. I do I do all occasions, interpersonal, conflicts, blog posts, diary entries, that kind of thing. Advice, peer-to-peer remediation, language checks, optics, peer-reviewed theory, peer-reviewed praxis, peer-reviewed identity. Hey, what was that last one? Actually, wait. This is usually the point of which I ask how versed my audience, I mean conversational partner, is in, just the whole general field of problematics. Reiterating, of course, that I strive to make no assumptions and I'm always happy to provide a primer. There's a worthwhile dialogue regarding what assumptions really do make out of, quote, you and me, unquote. But one for another night. Assumptions, work beasts, and or derrieres, you and not slash or me. I'm aware of your by now experienced co-conspirator status, but I should be remiss not to ask, and I am nothing if not strangely avoidant of remissitude, conspiring, allegedly, activities of varying degrees of legality or lack thereof. You're versed in problematics, right? Quite without your consent, without voluntary movement, you find yourself nodding. That's so great. The community has been facing some serious challenges right now. You wouldn't believe some of these comment sections. But I'm forgetting myself. You just said yourself, you would believe it. You're down in the rhetorical trenches. Activism erasure, flagrant disempowerment, war imagery, comment sections. While we're at it, before I jump back into my little diatribe, do you have any pet issues I can support? After all, every self-suspecting advocate has something. Support, pet, causes, taking care of, takes a varying temperature. Oh boy. Yeah, uh, you, you have takes. You do, totally. You have the hottest takes under the sun. As a matter of fact, oh, do you ever feel like you're an overpowered avatar of the narrative instead of a person? Honestly, it's time to bring attention to one of society's most overlooked oppressed classes. Gamers. Oh god, I wish I was doing this stream with people. Okay. I gotta think really hard. Do you ever feel like you've been... I guess we'll go first. Oh. That should be read with... Oh no, I fucked up. I fucked up, I fucked up, I fucked up. Chat, I fucked up. That should be read with a wince, not over-enthusiastic voyeurism. Thankfully, we're having this discussion out loud and in person, so we don't have to worry about that kind of ambiguity. I think I'm missing some context, so fill me in if you would. Fire away. Arson. Yeah, so like, life? You've been getting sort of philosophical about life lately, you guess? Maybe it's the near-death experience, or the ennui of realizing you had all of these Earth goals and dreams that you've just had to leave permanently uprooted. People always say to remember that everyone has a story, so that sort of means life is a story, right? Like, you have one too. This whole thing is your story or whatever. Which it is. You mean, of course it is, but it's like, somewhere along the line you got really overly prepared to treat yourself as some kind of fleshy object ready to be a vessel for other people. And sure, you started it, but before you could really course correct, everyone else started kind of just accepting that and started kind of doing it to you too. And you're not even sure how much you want to course correct, but every situation you encounter seems ready to receive one really specific, useful version of you. You're not sure what'll happen to you if you break that script. It's occurred to you eventually that in every situation, it's like you're worried you're going to slide down this friendship failure cliff, so you're always just trying to do enough, be liked enough, make other people's shit happen. And you like helping, you do. If it was just helping, it wouldn't bother you, but he's looking at you. Come on, come on, come the fuck on, get academic with this. It's just this kind of modern day existential struggle of the outsider. The outsider is this vessel for the ends of the more firmly established, in-group of society into which they're breaking. Or maybe it's your difficulty giving up the structurally reinforced rewards of being useful, and you don't even know what it is you would be giving them up for, because there isn't that kind of room built into the experiment. Wow. First of all, I just want to thank you for coming out and sharing your experience. As you were talking, I couldn't help but tie a few threads. I hope you don't mind if I append them here. Your discussion of this sort of readiness to be used, I think you described it as a sort of readiness to exist as nothing but a form of input on the lives of others, really got me thinking about the kind of power asked into the opportunity at all. Of the power baked into the opportunity at all. Like we're discussing the ability to come into a conversation and immediately start giving recommendations, and that's frankly a role of social power. Power structures before in contextualization, considering we are, on before us. Belated welcome party, by the way. Oh my god. There's so much I want to unpack about his dialogue. Oh, Kankri, how I missed you. I think I get what you're getting at here. But to complain about the ability to make change, let alone the ability to wield enough social power to get others to make change, is coming off as pretty tone deaf and ultimately kind of a lot. Wow, you didn't mean that at all, but crud. Okay, yeah, maybe this is less of a hot take and more of a you problem personally. You thought for a second there that some of your problems might be societal though, or like structural even. Maybe it all has to do with your place in this medium. Even if there are other people who don't need what you need, and he sort of has a point, most of what your friends have been struggling for is some kind of agency, so you guess you felt like this could all be some part of the same big old machine. See, that's exactly the thing we're talking about. A machine here. Hold on. See, that's exactly the thing. We're talking about a machine here, and one that needs a lot of cogs to function. It's important to analyze this kind of feeling to figure out if it's the kind that is conducive to positive change and that collaborates well with those around it, or if it's the kind of feeling that threatens to distract and detract from the real central issues at hand. It's an easy trap to fall into. Hell, don't get me wrong, I've fallen into it myself, but that's exactly why it's important to keep an eye on ourselves for this kind of thing. There's no room for self-importance in a sustainable movement, after all. It's fine, but too helpful as a position of oppression on before us is coming dangerously close to blue blood apologism, or that is, I've never heard it outside of that context before, and to be really real with you, I can't say what I expect to. We're all learning. Take it as a note and move forward. Super duper nice chatting with you. By the time you realize Kankri's escorted you outside again, he's already calmly but collectedly slammed the door in your face. It's like a mic drop, but with a doorknob on it. Was it something you said? Blocked, unfollowed, reported. I should have known. I knew I should have talked about gamers. I double psyched myself out of it. Because I thought, like, no, talking about gamers it's too obvious of an option. It surely couldn't be. I forgot to make a save, but this is fine. Here, we'll skip back to gamers. Honestly, it's time to bring attention to one of society's most overlooked oppressed classes. Gamers. Huh. Okay. I'm familiar with the cause, don't get me wrong. Maybe you can direct me to some of your preferred sources, which isn't to say I'm not well read on the subject. I am. Very. Some of my closest friends are gamers. Hold on, I need to calm down. I don't know why that wiped me out. That's fucking got me. That got me so bad. Okay. I can't. Some of my closest friends are gamers. Hmm. Some of my closest friends are gamers. I mean, it's fairly often that I pick up a game myself, but I've been schooled on the differences between gaming as an activity and an identity, and I can step back and respect my place on the sidelines of a community I don't truly share. That's a hierarchy of relevance of experiences here, and, as with many hierarchies of oppression, I respectfully take my place at the relative bottom of the gamer and gaming adjacent heap. Little hobbies like that can be a major lifestyle and one of the most radical notes of cultural terminology, not political, high place in your face lifestyles there is. A lot of frivolous pursuits like that become a sort of breeding cavern for pubescent identity. At first I couldn't find much respect for, say, dumping hours into making pixels move on a screen faster than some other person can make the pixels move on the screen, let alone the state of your standard text or voice chat, spaces which seem almost designed to be as antithetical to productive dialogue as one can get. I just don't see the fuss, I guess. But I think it's super admirable that you're standing up for the community. Kudos on you for picking an underrepresented cause. Oh, right. I've distracted us. Did you have a question somewhere up in the thread? I mean, back there, metaphorically, conversational threads, lines of reason? Reviewing the news cycle and its representation of recent events in your own life, for which you're looking for a little language. You know what? We ought to have some citations on hand for this, and you don't want to hang out down in the doorway all night. Assumptions again, I guess, but come on. Perfect. Well, that's settled. Let's head up. With the air of that kid trying to put 7 folding chairs away at once and hoping all the other teenage volunteers are watching, he takes the stairs 2 at a time. You, doing your best to keep up, match the energy and reach the room just a couple seconds behind him. Oh, you try not to say as you step into whatever is the direct antithesis to the eye of the storm. Maybe if the hive was the eye of the storm, and then that eye had a second, smaller storm inside of it, the place inside the eye of a storm where, coincidentally, there was an extremely localized earthquake. Point is, compared to the absolutely sterile living room you've just come from, Kankri's bedroom seems to be the corner of the rug under which he swept all of his mess. Maybe it is a step forward in your friendship journey, you think, to be immediately trusted with the equivalent of an Earth teenager's cluttered closet. Oh, cool, he's not wearing. Okay, where did his shirt go? Um, let's. Hmm. I'm gonna take a moment to look through his room. Uh, let's see. He's got a he's got Minecraft right here. Oh, it's troll Minecraft. I wonder how stupid Steve's horns look. Um, ooh, is that I forgot what Pfefferi's heiress. No, not heiress. She's not an heiress because she's leading the country. I forgot what her empress name was. I know it's the initials are HIC, but I forgot. Okay. His photos. What is this down here? There's not a lot of stuff I immediately recognize at sight. Okay, why did he take his shirt off? That's better. And likewise, make yourself comfortable, whatever that should entail. You're not exactly under the watchful grandeur of society. Okay. That's better. And likewise, make yourself comfortable, whatever that should entail. We're not exactly under the watchful gander bulbs of societal expectation here. Societal shackles, the same from which my quirk originates and by which we all are bound. Fashion police. To that end, you look around for a place to sit. Briefly consider popping a squat on the coffee table for maximum cool points. Your gams can take it for a little while. Kankri unlocks his husk top, opens what looks like the 20th tab on the particular browser window, and completes a quick goggle search for Eris Kidnapped Breaking Live Update. He clicks over to the News tab, and you crane your head to count just how many of those photos on the wall are askew. Some look like they could almost be the default pictures that came with the frames. Back to our task, educating the uninitiated on your current representation in the news. Hello? I, and this is just speaking personally, would probably open with a general rundown of sorts of language we're seeing in mainstream telecasts, radio, anything Empire approved. Of course, opinion pieces, let alone the vast blogosphere, aren't innocent on this occasion either, but let's stick to one rhetorical opponent at a time. Like, look at this. He shows you an article with a selfie of two trolls, a sweep or two older than him at the skate park, onto which someone has photoshopped a large red outline and a zoom enhance. Sure enough, that's grainy little you in the background. The Great Lioness stalks into the professor's porch and deposits. Is this just all the messages he's receiving? I think it is. There's a visual language being used here which is, if you don't mind me saying, highly suspect and borderline incriminating. AC purrs out a thoughtful drumroll. And some might accuse me of veering off topic or forgetting the thesis we're operating under, but I would just like to place a reminder here for the discerning listener that visual language is in fact a field of language. Now, far be it from me to project any before-and cultural implications onto your non-before-and experience, but just to provide some context, there are plenty of other photos of you available. I think the most common ones you'll see posted with the goal of actually identifying and locating their subject are taken from one of a couple of drone scans, which of course bear their own unfortunate implications, but are, I think we can agree, at least not quite so Oh, wait. Do you have a word for detrollizing? Have you considered getting good? God, it's troll face meat. Oh my god. You did ask. Oh, I'm kind of obsessed with this photo. I'm screenshotting that. Vocabulary, assimilationist language, extraterrestrial erasure, and species shaming. You think so? You're picking up what he's putting down? They do kind of make you look like a cryptid. Hold on, I need to save this photo. Exactly. AC sent attachment beta copy 3 final for real. For your perusal. Not to mention, stop me if this is getting off base, the simultaneous projection of the dangerous extraterrestrial narrative and removal of extraterrestrial identity. Scare tactics, mutation politics, no longer barely. Okay, so Kankles just finished reading this and narratives that are, don't get me wrong, categorically more underprivileged than my own. One pushed out of the spotlight entirely, whereas most others, carefully manicured and manufactured, are pushed into their own assigned societal place. Does that make sense? Are we keeping a good pace? No, yeah, totally. It's funny, actually. I mean, no, hang on, no, it's definitely not. No, it's not. It's like, who needs the drama, right? It's just that it's one of many ways in which you and I find ourselves in arguably totally disparate positions, and at the same time, roles that are nonetheless pretty similar. Spectrum and extraterrestrial identity shouldn't, by all counts, contain much overlap, and in fact, analyzing that too hard as overlap risks doing some serious co-opting, but it's worth giving a quick shout to the shared sense of othering that comes with the category being named not like us, or not a part of this. Just look at the word alien, and while off-spectrum is a community-chosen label, of course, the spectrum itself isn't. It's not the only weird little position we have in common like that. It isn't? Take your recent foray into our general friend constellation, for example. I'm actually something of a friendship connoisseur myself. You always know how to pull out the philosophical school feeds on a girl. I'm not sure if it's, by any chance, been mentioned by any of our mutual acquaintances, although who am I kidding? It probably has, but anyway, I tend to serve a sort of advisory friend counseling sort of role around here. For context, some similar online circles might default to hierarchies of coolness. Note, problematic term, deeply entangled with spectral order. Avoid in the abstract. Metaphorical or literal. See, notice how we made use of terms specifically to call out its meaning, so I can call myself proud to have friends who consistently sidestep that debacle in favor of a more virtue-based de facto leadership structure. Keeps me on my front steps, lols. What we fostered is the kind of intentionality that can only come from a purposeful subversion, disruption of those... Oh, God. What we fostered in the kind of intentionality that can only come from a purposeful, subversive disruption of those easier, cliché peer group patterns. It helps when you have one or two individuals present who really want the position, and who want it out of a complete sense of altruism, not immature adolescent competition. Not that we're without our problems, mind you. They're great people, don't get me I'm glad we're cool, too. Kankri cuts off mid-sentence to make a few swift clicks, chat status disappearified, and the constant dinging of desktop notifications no more. He swivels around his seat to look at you, who, whoa, look at that, is looking up at the ceiling. Probably you've been looking at the ceiling for a while. It's really interesting up there. Anyway, let's compare notes. After all, you've been doing some seriously commendable work. I mean, I didn't think we'd see a captor take such a well-adjusted, borderline presentable approach for sweeps, but there you have it. Would you believe he hasn't come to my inbox with some sort of you won't believe me but proclamation of doom in an entire 48 hours? All that unlocked in just one night's work. Friendship, I mean, the work being friendship, which isn't any work at all. We don't ask for any thanks. The work is its own reward, for those like you and I mean. I've never finished any formal writing on the subject, though, not for a lack of effort, but how do I put this? There tends to arise, I've noticed, a need for a spot of group awareness proctor, someone with their hand to the pulse of, well, everything, ideally, but I am of course merely one troll. Not everyone is cut out for the sort of mental load that comes therewith, and not everyone is willing to bear it, and that's fine. Something as complex as microcosmic sociopolitical management, after all, can't be everyone's thing. Some of us would rather write friend fiction, or do those little card tricks, or grind wheeled surfaces along stationary surfaces. And I totally get it. He says this with the distinct air of someone who never had less of an interest in getting something. Anyway, it all does shake out in the end. Without people to go around messily engaging in worldly wants of night-to-night life, there would, arguably, be nothing left for us to analyze. I like to bear in mind what the work is for. Take an average Accord server, for example. Here we have a space basically built to goof off, a couple channels here to be dedicated to rational conversation, obviously, or else matters devolve quickly, but all the same, not everyone walks in with the goal of making any major sociological breakthroughs in the group chat. In fact, I don't think very many people would argue with me if I said that nearly everyone else logs on with no loftier goal than to hang. You don't know how to tell Kankri that, yes, most people do indeed go on social media to chillax. People with a more astute eye now might see a veritable microcosm rich with diverse identity statuses and diverse, frequently strong personalities, while some in those stomp casings might simply start preparing for a brewing storm. I see the chance for some real breakthroughs when put up to scrutiny. Eventually, there becomes a need for a living, breathing moral compass to define, by which I mean extrapolate, the comfort levels of everyone present, spoken or unspoken. Usually unspoken, but again, that's what those of us willing to speak for the silent are for. So, basically, he's calling himself some sort of friendship shepherd? Precisely, and there's plenty to speak on. There's so often such a complete lack of engagement in each other's under-verbalized realities. Take a simple comment made from one colder-blooded member of the chat to someone in more, let's say, warmer 9JA, OJA, Olive Jade Aqua, you'll pick it up as we go, territory. Now, maybe out of context, to someone who shares the perpetrator's more CIP-leaning status, cerulean indigo purple, so a little colder, it might be a friendly jibe or even a generous offer. But what they're lacking is the contextualization of that warmer OJA experience that has heard a similar such comment 1,000 times before, and almost always with strings attached. Strings that, if plucked, will be an admittance of need and therefore inferiority. Sure, nothing is meant by, say, offering to cuss out a particular rude online FPS player on a fellow cerulean friend's behalf, or whatever have you, but to extend the offer in warmer directions without qualifications begins to ring of culling connotations. Culling connotations. It would really be nice if words could retain definitions between universes. You were just getting used to culling being an adoption thing. It sounds like it can be a friend's thing too. Ah, right, that's my failing to provide sufficient cultural context. What's your current working definition? Aranya filled you in on this a little. It's, you recall her words, a mechanism for taking care of the infirm or orphaned? You thought it was adoption, but it seems like that's only half of it. No, that's a literal usage. We're extrapolating out from here into the realm of microaggressions. It sounds like it would be good to get a second perspective on the basics, just to discuss some perilous framing issues, so if you don't mind, I think I'll run us through some context. I mean, Circuit's academic qualifications speak for themselves. It's been nothing but a pleasure to work with, hang together in recent pedagogies. I'm sure you've experienced this already, but it's just nice to have a fellow academic with whom to really sink some teeth into the wriggling meat of history and sociologics. Metaphorical dental aggression. So, it'll be nice for you to get two sources to draw your information from. Diversity of input is critical, and particularly here, I think. Oh. Someone somewhere once theorized that to really learn anything, you have to hear it 3 times. Rania and Kankri each seem quite capable of being their own 3 repetitions, perhaps a couple dozen, but you like learning. That is the friend activity of the day. 2 academics chilling. There isn't a need to mince words about this, actually. It's all very hemispectrum loaded. So, the culling system, established by her benevolent conservation. Okay, so that's Vefrie's name, I think. As her first act upon taking the throne, out of course only usable... As her first act upon taking the throne, but of course only usable as policy after decades upon decades of real legislation drafting. Thereafter, culling is a system of guardianship which operates on a few core assumptions. We're going to be diving into casteism, ableism, which rests on multiple axes, real ability and presumed ability, for lack of a better turn of phrase. So-called caste realism will be rearing its ugly nug bone. Institutionalization, deprivation of freedom, failed burrito tests. Are we still good to go? Just for this one specific lured up, warnings in the pause screen menu do apply regardless. Yes, that all sounds good. This one is long. No, actually, let's get the TLDR. 0 consequences for opting out of the... I'm taking the long explanation. Great. Launching straight into it, culling is a system that applies a rubric to trolls suspected of insufficient self-care. We should take a pause to interrogate insufficiency and what it entails, and that task relies first on defining self-care. Without getting us too deep into the weeds, I could send you comment sections for parages on this exact discussion. The act of defining self-care for another's, let's put a little emphasis on that. Self has to be understood as in and of itself an act of power. No 2 ways about it. A system based on dictating from the top down is what is best for certain members, and then monitoring whether they remain within those bounds is problematic to its core. Oh, you don't intend to get deep into weeds again anytime soon. What? Sorry, I think you're making some kind of joke? In which case it's a faux pas to ask for an explanation of a punchline. Nothing. Once more, you should have what feels like 4 years or something spent back in those tangled woods. Okay. So, self-care and how policing it implies power structures prioritized over who retains a right to the self. That should be the end of the discussion. But generations upon generations of internet users who happen to also bear real potential to become policymakers have proven that consistently untrue. So alas, we continue our great unpacking, quote-unquote real-world implications, because, oh yes, definitely the realist spaces are the ones only the privileged partake in. But that's it. That's its own can of dirt noodles, great for aerating soil, excellent for all of the weeds we're not getting into. Oh, goodness. Bot in chat, I don't have Twitch open, who cares? Hold on. Even beyond the letter of the law, what constitutes unfitness to live freely is subject to implicit bias at every turn. Things like which tasks are considered too strenuous, whether one is keeping good company, whether one is minding one's stress levels as dictated by the outside observer. It's well known that there are entire career fields considered too stressful for trolls of a certain hemotype, and it's in the letter of the law that making decisions that push one past one's perceived stress threshold is a viable culling criterion. For an anecdotal demonstration, take two trolls who are consistently skinning knees at your local skate park. One, violet-blooded, is left very well along, so long as it's their own knees they're skinning. The other, burgundy, is not only a poor decision-maker, but it is an immediate indictment of the subgroup around them for allowing such a heinous situation to occur. While the violet blood is going around making a fine navigator While the violet blood is going to make a fine navigator on rough seas some days, the burgundy's risk analysis is called into question. We can apply this logic outward in any number of ways, a cerulean and a bronze applying for the same legislative apprenticeship, a purple with eccentric decor taste, or an olive unfit to keep hive, a burgundy orphaned at 5 sweeps and swept into care versus an indigo orphaned at 4 and passed only through a brief, although still invasive, evaluation. Even your jades and aquas don't escape that greater scrutiny with quote-unquote risk-taking behavior, Reed being a wriggler, alternatively Reed being a grown-ass adult. Fascinating how neither of these things constitute crimes. There is an element of lifespan shaming to it all. I shouldn't have to point out, I think, that what one chooses to do with 60 sweeps of life is no more precious than what one chooses to do with 2,000. I particularly shouldn't have to point out that, if it were more precious, that implied value should belong to the owner of the life. That's all information that can be goggled at a later date, so let's get into some of the more hidden depths of its top-down structure. It is, again, pretty brazen, but often unacknowledged, regardless, in a kind of willful ignorance at best. For starters, note that coal-taking, which is a damnable profession anyway, is de facto caste-locked, considering a suitable career route only for physically fit trolls over the age of 100. For your reference, the average lifespan of rustblood troll is generally considered to hover somewhere around 50. In any case, one's placement in a coaling hive is determined, or an alternative route, but again, 9 times out of 10 we're going to be defaulting to a hiving placement. The cold troll, see also coal charge, loaded in unpleasant terminology, is moved into a stranger's hive, often, but not always, torn from their loose if applicable, and placed under whatever supervisory rules and expectations that stranger sees fit, an arrangement that may or may not ever see an end date. Veering back into lifespan shaming again, but for all that life skills are critiqued in this context, efforts to build them are usually considered overly strenuous, low priority, and confusing. After all, what does a person need those for when they're being so nicely cared for? Now, we loop back to its implications and to something called coaling culture. Back to that hypothetical offer we were discussing in our FPS scenario, it might ring of other worse-intentioned offers that most people warmer than cerulean have heard before, getting into extreme frequency the warmer we go, and that isn't a thing it's always made particularly safe to voice. And before you indict the word safety, I'd just like to unpack it for a minute, because it's been muddied to hell and back. There's a material safety, sure, survival and freedom from bodily harm. What goes unacknowledged within mainstream before and harm analysis is what concept of physiological safety, security, let's say. What is a troll to do when the premise of their personhood and contributions are under constant scrutiny, when they risk any footing they may have spent months among this friend group gaining? And so, a lifetime of navigating double talk means any speech that isn't proven not attached to a proverbial snare is, until proven otherwise, psychologically unsound. Not everyone can be expected to weather the storm that comes with noticing and calling out these things, even on their own behalf. In fact, I'd argue that on one's own behalf is when it's most treacherous, and most needs of someone else to come in and really define the situation. Wow, he really feels strongly about all this. I think it's interesting that he immediately wants to be the one who, like, manages these sorts of interactions, manages his friends, like, polices his friends of sort, because it feels like an internalization of culling culture, despite his outspoken attitude towards it. You know, he sees everyone else as unfit to take care of themselves in a way, unfit to, socially take care of themselves and navigate a political structure, He thinks he needs to be the one in charge of them, swoop in and save them, and although he rightfully calls out culling culture, he too participates in it. I might be losing my voice a little. We should check some language there. You're new, so believe me, no hard feelings taken. This is just a friendly educational comment. I don't know why it has to be about a feeling. What about what I just said to you registers as a feeling? It's just clear that he cares a lot about injustice and about doing good. Please let me know where I'm misstepping, but I don't see myself doing anything here but laying out facts. Facts that he cares to prove, right? How can we appropriately address care is not the operative word here. You're a little uninitiated, so I'm not taking it personally. I'm just warning you that someone, somewhere, someone less acquainted with your circumstances might take it personally, and that's worth knowing and avoiding repeating well in advance. When a legislator goes to work, no one in the gallery is turning to each other and going, wow, they seem really put out about all this nasty business. We aren't wondering why they make opening statements or what they got all dolled up for, or why this was worth leaving the hive in the evening. You're new here, so it all takes a lot of translation, but there's a lot of emotional surveillance to be had around here, and all takes a very Castus bent. The Castus bent isn't where you were coming from, obviously. You would, if I didn't check your behavior here and now, go around making the same conversational blunder with every acquaintance you make here, and then you would wonder why only those who incidentally trend warmer might find your actions triggering when prior encounters have proven them totally innocuous, because they are innocuous, hypothetically, in a life not under a constant downpour of that kind of emotional surveillance. Right? And when one has the half-hearted luxury of being home alone, the hive isn't... the hive is typically the hive is typically affiliated instead with a completely expected degree of conflict as happens between symbiotic species with varying limited communication. So there's a sort of sanctity to that which functions finally as some emotional antithesis to the cuddly panopticons waiting outside the door. What I'm saying is we got enough, oh no, poor thing, outside of here and really don't need to replicate it inside the... That's not how I run my hive. Kankri does not want to look at you. There's an environment I'm doing my best to steer you not to recreate. Right, you say. Thanks. He does a lot of work creating and maintaining environments. Precisely. You think of a spotless hive, of the lovingly offered cushions and brimming candy bowls on the lower level. You think of the tornado-struck respite block he whisked you up to. Like this environment, right? I strive to make all my conversations healthy environments. No, this room. It's a pretty nifty act of rebellion. He recovers quickly. Exactly. Standards of presentable living spaces intended for, note, emphasis, living, aren't standards of being cultured or refined or even welcoming. They're cold status markers. What's wrong with paper on the floor? What defines what a shelf is for? I'm sorry. Is a laundry chair a violation of anyone else's personal freedoms? Is a laundry chair a crime? Really, really good sentence. I'm screenshotting this too. Hold on. Fuck, Kankri, I love you and your laundry chair, I support you. The discomfort in the air is so thick that you can barely avoid cringing, and a brief flicker behind Kankri's eyes says his skin is crawling under it.
Minutely, he swallows very, very thickly, and he keeps furtively checking your face. The set of his eyebrows and mouth and shoulders are practiced, but the flare of his nostrils says he's preparing for this to fall apart somehow. His resistance being cold read by a stranger makes noticing it feel almost sticky, invasive. Oh. This hive does not belong to Kankri Vantas. Oh, wrong button. Its interior design decisions do not belong to the 6-week-old you're talking to. There's been no distinct smell of animal dander or little scuffling claw marks or other little signs that something that lives here is out hunting. This 10,000 word per minute staunch allyship towards the cold makes a different, more visceral kind of sense. If the whole hive is it performing for any guests at all? Or just for the kind who would prefer to stay upstairs in his room? Feels kind of dangerous to do anything with that revelation, but also kind of impossible to move forward without acknowledging you've realized he's been mandatorily adopted. No, please, we don't have to hide anything. There's nothing of any shame here. Deep injustices for which the system ought to be ashamed, but nothing to be withheld personally. I was looking, perhaps foolishly, for a start free of some of the usual baggage. There's a privilege, seldom enjoyed by the non-spectra-bound, one that involves entering a conversation with that stereotype as mental president. We've done that, so there's really not a reason to keep any more context under the rug. Anyway, you're right. There are implications for your situation. If discovered, the perception of agency is such that it's you on the chopping block for a perceived threat rather than myself for, more accurately, knowingly hiving a fugitive, and you need to be made aware of those anyway. He won't be home until near sunrise, but I'm prepared to accommodate you even past the point, pending your own comfort levels. Okay. You can move on, but you're unavoidably drawn to how much it sucks. It sucks. Again, the whole thing is a sickening imposition. Nearly every troll on the planet grows up under Lucis' care. One can expect experiences like burning oneself the first time one tries to light a stove, or failing one's first several dozen attempts at stairs, to be normal, common experiences, common enough to be cited frequently online as a sort of universal, shared nostalgia, which unfortunately, in actuality, isn't a nostalgia everyone has access to. Literally, the stairs thing comes in the hive owner's welcome packet. Little too dense for early readers, but in this case, I was begrudgingly admit it's the thought that counts. But anyway, culling is, functionally, a theft of those shared experiences. It's theft of a lot of things. You have learned from past experience not to just ask why someone is an orphan. I do think it's a very nice touch that he has been culled, that he has been adopted, because it really does put an extra lens on the sort of, internalized culling behaviors that he too has, probably as a mechanism of fighting back against his own culling, because, he's being forcibly taken care of, and so he feels to regain some of his own agency and power, he needs to take care of someone else in that exact same way. But Kankri must catch some look on your face, because... No, there was never a Lucis in the picture. In retrospect, there's so much I wish I had tagged, but this platform doesn't allow editing. Falsely implied custodial death, a little late now. Something about the symbiosis between species, apparently. There are Luci have been observed raising wrigglers of any hue, but that's far from typical, and just not looked to as a solution on an imperial level. It shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone familiar with Beforce's internal philosophies. Obviously, a place with a vested interest in maintaining spectral order would find it uninteresting, maybe even against their interest, to go about testing what presumptions about it could be pushed a little. Anyway, and once one's in the system, regardless of the initial circumstances, there's a high burden of proof barrier to finding one's way out. Right, you think. Ronnie has been living alone since she was 4, didn't she say? Bit of a status quo thing. If the 4-week-old seems fine, you can leave it. A grub obviously can't take care of itself, though, and it sounds like no one came by when Kankri turned 4 to double-check any of those thoughts. You still think 4 sweeps is very tiny for all that, but Kankri spends a long moment very patiently taking in a look that must be on your face. Oh, Luci naturae haven't been recorded in most off-spectrum hues. Off-spectrum. Burgundy, ochre, umber, yellow, green, olive, jade, aqua, cerulean, indigo, purple, violet, fuchsia. Under each of those, there's a brooding cavern, handbook somewhere delineating which hues fall within normal variants and which are which hues fall within normal variants, and which are a little too in between to qualify for any of the privileges or stigmas of the nearest established caste. Although, even referencing one spectrobound caste as nearest is, again, mentally saving some links to send you sometime. Not good practice, though, not preferred. Anyway, no, this isn't within the bounds of Burgundy. See, that even sounds, weird to say. See, it is, incidentally, from an alternative brand that does carry some of the color, although not out of catering to the off-spec market or anything. I believe the current statistics are that there's just the one of me. Scarlet hue off-spec. Again, I'll be the only one in that tag. Candy red, to find clothing in various AES posts if you're into that kind of thing. Personally, not my favorite turn of phrase. In this hue, I mean, not only one living off-spectrum troll that troll total, although everyone seems astonished to hear that, despite it being not hard to just venture into the tag and find some dozen people on any platform at least, if one is brave enough to put it in big and brace for the storm of fakerism accusations. No cast, no loses from hatching, no leaving it, sounds like, at least for now. Higher barriers to securing one's independence, sure, I wouldn't go that far. Like you've already pointed out, the solution lies for now in strategic rebellion and carefully placed points. Again, laundry chair, for example. Surely you've noticed laundry chair. I'm told it's a bit of a standout feature. I think we can both look at me and agree there are no visible faults to hygiene or self-care at play. The existence of a laundry chair under those conditions, then, lies in fundamental opposition to some assumption people would make about where that line lies and how to use that aforementioned societal rubric. It's a difficult game, but a piece of proof that, again, healthy results can exist without the more nonsensical standards on which culling behavior is so frequently based. Does epically owning those bad arguments like that work? I like to think it lays the seeds for a larger body of groundwork that can be cited at a later date, both by oneself and by the community at large as the system is increasingly exposed to its own contradictions. It all just sounds really slow and sad. Sad, honestly. You don't tell him that. From the looks of things, it's fairly clear that Kankri basically lives at the computer. From the sound of his voice, he does not want to be in this place, and that's a little bit in opposition to him being the kind of guy who lazes around inside all the time. It sounds sad to spend that much time just trying to fight back against a house on its own terms. But hey, you're an anomalous space-time rending alien. You walked all the way here, and boy are legs tired, just to let your zapping recuperate. Maybe this all is his day-to-day. You're a walking, life-changing field trip with Zuko. What it sounds like he really needs is... Oh, I don't want to fuck this one up. I don't want to get this one wrong. Because now I give a fuck about Kankri. I give, a lot of a fuck about Kankri, and I don't want to pick the wrong dialogue option. Yeah, I can go back, but I don't want to pick the... Maybe I'll consult the game guide. Is it a little bit treating? Maybe, but... who cares? Fuck. Kankri, befriend us, guide. Where's the fucking guide for Kankri? I don't want to get this wrong. I'm thinking extremely, very hard right now. I feel like going outside could be, really bad for us, but I don't know. I can't find the fucking guide for kankri and I'm so cooked. I'm so cooked. Um, I guess we'll, I don't know. Um, Maybe I'll let him air it out. How long can you expect to have the hive to yourselves? We should be all set for another few hours. But if it's the sun you're worried about, I'm not planning to turn you out in the morning. We might need to get a little inventive about sharing the space, but as long as we're quiet, you seriously should be fine. Question, how do you feel about closets? The arguably offensive connotations thereof as just a temporary living space are not lost on me, but we're not running a five-star hold on. Loaned abode here. If he has the run of the hive, why is he cramped up here with nothing to do but surf the web? I prefer to leave as little of a dent in the downstairs living space and its plush upholstery as possible. I would apologize for the cramped conditions, but actually, I trust you fended for yourself with less pretty recently, so I don't see a need. Moons, caves dug by wild lucii if my memory serves, captors undoubtedly head-splitting interior design. You just have to wonder about how good it feels to stay up here all the time. Feels like a good million years ago you were once a young teenager shut in their bedroom. Can't you do something? Anything that isn't this game of self-preserving adolescent hide-and-seek? Look, alright, let me stop you right there. You're clearly perceptive, and you've picked up on the kinds of artificial limits a gilded cage situation can place on one's general recreation options. Those limits can be both real, enforced, and implied, claimed not to be enforced, but in actuality subject to a series of small and dire social consequences if that limit is crossed, the idiomatic death of 1,000 lacerations. You wouldn't believe how much of the community congregates online for exactly those reasons. And with said community out there, well, who needs the hive? I know I was bemoaning the theft of normalcy, but in reality, I do think we should question normalcy as a good to be striven for. I can assure you there's good, concrete work to be done from here. At another time, I'd love to introduce you to more of how we're doing it. Well, yeah, but you meant more like something that feels good right now. Something that's just existing for this moment, in a way someone didn't define. Sure, but in a way that also isn't defined exclusively in opposition. You know, any one thing to do just for him? I think you'll find you don't need to do anything for me. No, crud, that's not. You meant for nothing, for shits and giggles. Rule-breaking light. He's already using the hive for one of those unapproved teenage parties you hear so much about, party of two, but you're trying really hard to sell this. Why not have some fun with it? I'm not sure that upholding a trope as a mandatory adolescent experience is the cool. I'm not sure that upholding a trope as a mandatory adolescent experience is the kind of argument you want to be writing on, and if tropes as arguments are what you're dead set upon, I think I would particularly steer you away from one that exists almost exclusively to end in disaster for the protagonist as some sort of morality play, but I'm getting your point and willing to give it a shot. Quick aside, sorry, you have a Lucis's but you have a Lucis is hunting genre equivalent? Television history, screenwriting, neither of which I need to distract us with, actually. Note to self, compare cultural notes. Don't get your hopes up for getting anything out of the exercise. It's fine, but it's just a hive, but sure. With your ideally soon-to-be bud in tow, you head back downstairs with a hope, a dream, and a very slightly reckless gleam in your eye. You've some wreck, but not all of it. He doesn't seem particularly jazzed about the idea of putting his shirt back on, but he does so anyway. That explains the blue on his... Oh my god. I remember seeing his sprites earlier, and I was wondering, why are his buttons indigo? Because usually I'm thinking it's some sort of, like, romantic gesture of a sorts, Like, how, Nepeta wears indigo for Equius. And so, or just how a lot of fan trolls will wear the colors of their partners. But I see now. I see. Oh my god. That's a really, like, interesting bit to chew on, considering how heavily color-coded trolls' outfits are, you know? Like, you don't wear anything but black, gray, white, and your hue, except for some very particular cases, you know, like, reds, bright reds seem to be a highlight color sometimes, since they're an off-spectrum color. But when it comes to someone's actual hue, you have to have a very good reason to be wearing that, and usually, when people willingly wear someone's hue, it's as, you know, proclaiming their relationship, almost the way you would wear like a wedding ring or a promise ring or like just some sort of like matching necklaces or something. But considering calling culture, this feels like a sign of like his lack of agency in that he's being forced to wear the color of his caretaker, you know? Like like this shirt was not bought for him. That's what it's reading to me, that this shirt was not bought for him, that most of his clothes fuck, I misworded that. That this shirt was bought for him, that he did not buy it himself, that most of his clothes were bought for him by someone else, you know? And just, fun to chew on. Even as you descend the stairs, you start the work of scanning your surroundings with your hands set on your hips, determined to find your target. Anything interesting. More specifically, anything that sounds fun in Kankri Land. Your eyes land on Exhibit A, which you stride toward while channeling your best Vana White. The bookshelf. Home to a mostly hardcover and mostly color-coded section, which doesn't seem to have been recently dusted. Has he ever had the chance to read every book down here? Admittedly, no. Would he like to? Kankri takes a tome off the shelf to turn it over in his hand. He makes a small performance of opening the cover, clearing his throat, and reading off a brief plot summary from inside the jacket, in which our protagonist, an indigo art collector, makes contact with a plain, unassuming jade sullied by her past. Nope, you're good, actually. Kankri somehow makes the act of closing a book feel like a mic drop. Yeah, no thanks. I've read a few, actually, but your intent is totally seen and completely valid. We can work with this. Imperfect working with, make do scenario. This vibe. Yeah, rebellion vibes. When Mom's not home. We're not calling him that. Linking you some reading on inescapability of the Beforeign Matriarch. No rush, of course. I'll be expecting your thoughts anytime this week. When Lucis? Cold taker. Right. I understand your dilemma now. You really tried, pal. Coal taker, that's the vocabulary you're looking for. You said you had a few ideas to float. Please, don't let me interrupt. You mentioned the stove, right? Let's start. Let's go turn on the stove. What, just stare at it? Semantically an option, I guess, and I totally see the symbolic rebellion, but it's a bit of a waste of gas. Awaiting context, judgment withheld, environmental perils. You actually meant to cook with. Sure, I respect your thinking. You incline your head in a way that says, and? I just mean, isn't that, you know, a girl thing? I was wondering when the misogyny would appear. Whoa. Wow. Alright, okay, alright. Doesn't he witness being done by non-girl daily? Didn't he just establish that Coal Taker is a dude? No, not the Skepticat, not the time. Like, no, you say? It is not a girl thing. No, by all means, I'm not rejecting the idea. You being our planet's guest and myself being thoroughly up for the challenge. Oh, wow. After our thorough deconstruction of before and hospitality, there you go, perpetuating that exact language. You get it, right? How what I'm doing is different from the language? I'm not sure it is, actually. Let's delineate this for a minute. Let's go learn how to use an alien stove before you go old and gray. What are you... Hey, don't just go in there and start poking things. I figured we would be pulling up some kind of tutorial. In the end, you do let him pull up a tutorial. Kankri hopping up on the dinner table to sit and displaying his phone while you lean against the table's edge. The two of you also realize that you have no knowledge of before ingredients. Kankri has no knowledge of cooking, so you turn to GrubTube for tutorials there too. Oh, click too fast. The tutorials start start out quite complex, pretty pastel-colored things with such ambitious architecture that you don't even know if Earth food could manage it. Kankri grumblingly revises his searches to include more and more beginner basic 101. What you land on is more or less an omelet. You go for a plain one, motivated on your end by the fact that flipping even that seems complicated enough already, and on Kankri's end by an apparently picky palate. What was it? We needed one of those. He gestures with both hands to trace out the approximate shape of a wide spatula. Thing flippers? Oh god, this is going to go so poorly. You move this party into the kitchen, and it doesn't go that poorly. The counters are well stocked with snack foods that are ready to eat as soon as the package is open, presumably to further discourage any survival cooking. Kankri shoves aside the ones in the fridge to retrieve the egg carton stored behind them. It's hungry work, the cooking business. You point towards a bowl of the pre-packaged stuff questioningly, in exchange for which Kankri snorts and gestures at you to go ahead. He's insistent on doing any of the important parts, so aside from a quick turn mixing the eggs, your job is mostly to jiggle the mouse pad so the husk top doesn't fall asleep, and thrust windows open to dispel a slightly burnt smell, and munch on your pre-dinner snack. Learning to clean off an alien stovetop is a greater frustration than preparing the food itself, but you're waved away from it. And although you're not sure it's the politest call, you acquiesce and leave to wait in the dining room without too much protest. You do wince just a little as you hear a hiss of a breath and then a running faucet. Maybe letting it cool down for just a little longer would have been wise. He burnt himself on the stovetop. It all comes full circle. He burnt himself on the stovetop. Kankri emerges with 2 plates and a band-aid over one finger, and nods past the expansive dining table over to the couch, to which you think, heck yeah, no rules while Dad's not home. You mosey on over and sit, and eat in relative silence. Well, I can confidently call that one of the most mediocre meals I've ever eaten. I'm so sorry. It's not that bad. Frankly, it's not that bad at all. A little more scrambled than rolled. You like scrambled eggs. I was kidding. Come to think of it, I probably shouldn't have been. This was a collaborative project, and I would never disparage your efforts. It's actually fine. Oof, lame jokes. Very few trolls on before us have never had a badly made omelet. I mean, consider basic motor development in those early sweeps. Actually, I'm sort of calling illusions normalcy worship, treading a line here. Huh? Oh, I thought something scary was happening. I just pressed the wrong button. Sort of glad, considering. He trails off before that sentence gets any more personal. The room lapses into silence again. Try to scoot around a little if you start to feel the couch doing any long-term molding around your form, by the way. Oh, sorry, what? Sorry, totally thought I alluded to this. Again, I try to leave as little of an imprint on the space as possible. Oh, like a literal one. Like the print your butt would make in these cushions. Precisely. Just to show you were listening, you pick up your butt and scoot a couple inches to the left. To your relief, the couch does seem to be kind of luxurious. The couch does seem to be the kind of luxurious foam deal that swings back with little complaint. Kankri's plate joins the only pre-existing dish on the table, that candy dish from before, and yours follows it. And then there's nothing to talk about. You eye the bowl. It's heaping, barely short of pouring over the sides, with what seem to be those little licorice Scotty dogs. Strapped for any other conversation, you gesture to it. So, dessert? Ugh. If you're into that kind of thing... Oh, licorice hater? I've never tried them, actually. Nor do I intend to. Let's make no calcium struts about it. We're looking at the presentation of a gift no one asked for, and one in a series. Cut fruit, iced pucker fruit, water infusions, respiratory coolant tablets, you name it. The bowl actually is arguably one of our most insidious examples, and the longest lasting. The bowl, of course, already stands out via the choice of candy itself. Setting out a delicacy like that may be widely understood among the warmer classes to be nothing more than a gross display of wealth, but it'll take much more than a semantically correct argument to unseat such a practice from its traditional pedestal of hospitality. An inanimate presence of designed to creep its way into the interior design aesthetic, and when left sitting, demanding its presence be interpreted as passive. Removal of the bowl, says the status quo, would be demanding action, worse still, even labor. To leave it there, well, it's already been there. Why ask the status quo, are you raising... I ask the status quo, are you raising such a fuss? No, who dares to? And here's where we've laid our rhetorical trap. We is, of course, hypothetical here. I would never implicate you in this kind of behavior. Active protest of the bull would be, of course, ingratitude, emotional immaturity. It doesn't end there. Even passive refusal can be leveraged, whether as a sign of disrespect or of the pitiable and emotionally closed off still in need of help and healing. I want to put, Kankri from Befriend Us and Rose Lalonde from Act 1 of Homestuck in a room together. Just put them in a room together and let that unfold. Please, God. Oh my God. Oh, he has to live with so many mind games. Oh. Why doesn't he just eat the candy then? And admit defeat? No, barring that, admit need, even want that was even there to begin with? What comes next? Snuggle planes? Grooming products? Emotional check-ins? Slippery slope fallacy checked, fallacy locked and loaded. What you're looking at is a symbol of projected expectations and needs. It's a common tactic of the ruling class used to undermine personal self-definition, which, as we've been over, is pretty problematic. Every regular likes candy. No one might argue, in bad faith, and I apologize for this upcoming expression, in their right mind, would stick up their nose at candy. Casual ableism. Something of a universal gift. Yeah, like a candy dish at a receptionist's desk, or a gift-wrapped scented candle from someone you only half know. It's still in character, therefore I, being of even sounder mind, will take every step possible to provide it. It's the little things that brighten their lives. Calling culture infantilization, belittlement, lifespan shaming. Kankri says it's the little thing that brightens their lives in a tone that suddenly makes you aware of how much sanctimony exists in the world, how much higher one can always climb in it. For a moment, it causes his regular speaking voice to come across upsettingly normal. I gotta reread that now. Well, this is in character, therefore I, being of even sounder mind, will take every step possible to provide it. I don't know. It's a familiar story, though a nigh on impossible one to relay online without being subjected to anywhere from 15 to 50 notifications, all containing the same characterized copy-pasted account. Online harassment, clipboard noodles, it's not even a very good one. Let's say you're trying to walk from one end of the hive to another to retrieve a mobile device thoughtlessly left in the ablutions block. You do this without bothering to throw on a shirt, considering, understandably, you're planning to immediately get back in the coop. Should you make this journey unseen, it's an uneventful moment in anyone's morning. Should you make it in your own hive, even better. But let's say, on this particular morning, the hive's other inhabitants happen to have chosen to turn in slightly late. And also, on this particular morning, in front of your unfortunately awake witness, you, say, briefly shivered on the way back up the stairs. Now, just for my benefit as a storyteller, and to keep me from committing any egregious misframings, what would be your usual, general, cultural expectation? If you shiver on the stairs in front of your roommate, Dad, they might ask if you're cold? Kankri makes a face like he's considering fighting against your oppression too. It's one of his most frequent faces. Sure, okay, even that has things to unpack, but despite my refusal to establish normal as a meaningful baseline, I think your cultural context makes this hypothetical a bit more cut and dry than your typical dissertation, demonstration. I'm going to construct for us a quick hypothetical total neutral, a sort of baseline for respect. Let's say you're a functioning troll. I'm a functioning troll, unless I've specifically requested otherwise. You and I are both aware that I'm capable of taking care of basic sensory needs without outside input. I'm going to narrow in on a specific point within that observation and bear with that observation, and bear with me, that you've demonstrated no want or need for any kind of tool to better stay warm. The tools are at your disposal. We're discussing a matter of choice. Our hypothetical, respectful observer has seen you engage in a chosen, temporary inconvenience, one you had every tool to avoid if you saw fit, and has gone on with their day. Yeah, yes. Could have thrown a shirt, chose not to, because that's a peopling sometime. Now, let's say, instead of that, you wake up with a pile of new shirts in the evening, freshly ironed. Ooh, yike. Right. And now imagine it's this, and similar gestures for every otherwise totally Trollian and acceptable slip of a similar magnitude. Trip once on the stairs, for example, and I suggest, actually, I have a whole library of reliable resources I could offer for our demonstration's hypothetical protagonists to debate their way into restraining the ability to move between floors without an escort, but it's a hollow victory. Even then, it's one far too many have lost. So it's just, don't give an inch then, like leaving the Scotty dogs uneaten. Kankri tugs uncomfortably at the cuff on his shirt. So it's, give a few inches. Kankri's tone is clipped, like he's speaking as efficiently as possible. Strategic inches. Ah. This starts to feel a little beyond your pay grade, or at least the afternoon's pay grade. The refusal to leave a butt print on the couch, the cautious scrubbing of the stove till it's spotless, all makes a little bit more sense. Don't worry too deeply about all that. It's a matter of principle more than anything, and you made a decent point earlier about coming down here. There's something about pacing the full length of a gilded cage up to its edges, rather than marking out one's own territory within it, that makes its boundaries all the more infuriating, I guess. But even so, I'm going to call the payoff worth the venture. That's good. Still, though, you don't want to alarm him, but as you think back over the past hour, there are several places you two did leave a mark down here. Not just the snacks you grabbed, but things like the eggs missing from the fridge, the milk carton that's now considerably lighter. Right, I was thinking about that. Might be a good idea to pick ingredients that don't as obviously need to be cooked before eating next time, or it risks being obvious in which ways I'm being a reckless danger to myself while left to my own devices. It's nothing catastrophic. Trigger warning, unsanitary to follow. Trigger warning, food judgment to follow. I'm debating the merits of claiming to have made one of those drinks with the raw eggs in them. Whether that or this is considered more of a risk to my health is a legitimate toss-up. Yeah, not your best laid plan ever. You probably could have... Please don't apologize. At worst, I'll be facing the disastrous consequences of having proven I won't burn the hive down. Kankri glances down at the band-aid on the side of his hand, over his minuscule stove burn. And having gotten really into fingerless gloves for a couple of weeks. It'll be a good look for him. Still, though, he clearly devotes so much of his time navigating this maze of giving the halfway competent impression he wants to, and if he had done a little more listening before starting, maybe... Look, I appreciate this, but continually apologizing for a decision I made is going to cross a line eventually. Right. And honestly, it's a choice I would make again. This is nice. Doing something just 'cause? Well, that's half of it. No offense, but you're not exactly the inventor of the idea. I just mean that's nice what can happen when everyone in space has already attained the same level of general enlightenment. Aw. Is something wrong? Okay, you're going to say it. He's been dissing your friends a lot? Insulting their intelligence? Oh, yeah. It doesn't feel like a compliment to be the only person at the same level of general enlightenment when he's saying it to throw other people under the bus. Crud, I never meant to overstep. Honestly, I'm sure you keep great company. You keep his company. On this planet, you two keep the same company. Those are your friends. Right, of course. And they're great people. And they're great people, down in there somewhere. I know better than anyone that can take a lot of work before the inner purity of heart is able to really shine in a way that's socially appropriate or productive. It's what makes the work worth it. I think we're on the same page with that. Is that what it's about? Deep downs? I suppose you aren't in a position to judge, considering the dramatis personae of your friends list, but in your defense, most of your friendships are run-ins. You're dropped in on a person without the benefit of context and have to dig in to find the soft, fleshy bits, whether because that's what the pool god puppeting your brain tells you to do, because of some kind of reckless nosiness. More often than not, though, you're in survival mode. The faster you humanize, trollinize, okay, now you're doing it too, yourself to your audience, the less likely you are to do something drastic. And 17 times out of 38, you never spoke to them ever again. So long, thanks for the memories, hope this encounter did something for you. It's different for him. He has to live with these people, and it kind of seems shitty to carry on if all he's doing is sitting there hoping for them to come into their own, or be some version of themselves that he can approve of more. It seems like this kind of thing that would make pretty much all involved parties feel pretty resentful. Kankri's too well trained as a listener to tap his fingers or do anything to visibly indicate his impatience to start talking, but you can feel the glut of words building behind the pressure valve of his mouth. It doesn't take more than a second of pause for him to twist and release. I'm glad you're establishing background here because it is actually quite useful for me to understand the context of friendship you're used to. It'll negate any accidental red fruit and orange fruit comparisons. I'm also glad you felt comfortable expressing that unfiltered. Trigger warning situations of peril, negating. I could go point by point on my response, but I think it's simplest to circle back to a much earlier point. Namely, I still don't know why this has to be about a feeling. What exactly about friendship isn't a feeling? It's not that. Look, obviously feelings are involved in friendship. I'm not advocating against that. Camaraderie, affection, admiration, envy, resentments. These are all parts of the building blocks of the troll condition we call friendship. Figure of speech, possibly one worth retiring. I'm talking about the work, though. You keep using emotive language. Hope, approve, resentful. Seriously, I'm not trying to tone police here, but I think the use of the language is pretty indicative of basic miscommunication. This has nothing to do with how I feel about them. This is about social engineering. That's kind of exactly your point. Why does he feel like he has to engineer his friends? I don't consider them mutually opposed mechanisms. I'd argue them necessarily cohabitate, in fact. I feel like I covered a lot of this in my moral compass discussion earlier, but I don't mind recovering the ground. Consider your average Accord server or appropriate comparable alien social construct here. When you join a group server, do you consider the mod to not be friends with any of the people there? Or do you instead consider that it's likely that some level of guardianship is needed to maintain an environment that can more easily accommodate the frequently explosive people that make it home? Okay, sure, you can agree that a little tone setting from time to time is necessary. But mods aren't in mod mode all the time. It doesn't really seem like he ever takes off his moral compass thing. Again, the people he's morally compassing aren't even here, and yet he's still intermittently, to drag this metaphor out of its unnatural conclusion, issuing strikes. You're assuming that this doesn't go both ways. I assure you, the feedback is far from one-sided. Perhaps I've accidentally come across as unnecessarily critical. I assure you, I wouldn't do so without my friends establishing that as a norm in our group. They're very open with their feedback. I've come to understand it's one of the more unique benefits of our particular social circle. They're not afraid to tell you when... Actually, hold on. This might be one of the cases where it's more useful to get to the exact wording. He withdraws to. Pockets in those chest-high pants of his. Ah, here. Anyways, they're not afraid to tell you when you, quote, are so far up your own, refuse corridor, it's a wonder your voice doesn't echo. Yeesh. Or, goddamn, CG, does anyone else get to use Gen Moral today, or do you just want your own channel at this point? She then checks to see if I've got the channel jokes for the record. Or, more content-based. I just don't get how you can come here and talk about spectral blindness and platformativity or whatever, but my fantasy stuff in general is off-topic, but whatever. Oh boy, a few of those W's definitely came out with V's. I'm really not trying to pronounce it out loud. Appropriation or something? Oh wait, let me read this with the V's. Or more content-based. I just don't get how you can come here and talk about spectral blindness and normativity or whatever, but my fantasy stuff in general is off topic, but whatever. Oh, wait, did I miss that too? Perhaps a little theatrically expressed, but these are concrete notes in their way. They're a form of admittedly imperfect self-advocacy. I feel proud, even, that they feel comfortable expressing that to me. And in turn, I want to do the same for them, with the added combination of the fact that, due to my unique privilege of experience, I'm able, and I don't think this is bragging here, to separate myself from a heat-of-the-moment discussion. I'm happy to utilize that to provide at least an equivalent, if not greater degree of guidance, but in a more sidelong manner which hopefully minimizes the risk of any hurt feelings. Not to suggest my own feelings are hurt, I do my best to take these remarks in the spirit I believe they are given.
rather than just reacting to the literal phraseology, but we can't expect everyone to have the degree of patience, least of all most of the people in this group. And I guess I fail to see why that's a bad thing. Sure, equanimity in a friendship is a great thing to strive for, but you and I both know it rarely works out like that. I feel it's more useful for those of us with the resources to see multiple sides of an issue to do so, and help provide insight as needed to those who are less capable, inclined. As a once-in-a-while thing, maybe? But it's one thing to occasionally be the guy who decides to step in and say something. I feel like it's another thing entirely to make that your entire role to play. Why? It's not like we ever stop needing that role to be filled. I'm committed to doing this. I want to do this. But why? When the attempt is neither appreciated nor enjoyed, he doesn't seem to like managing them. You sincerely doubt they enjoy being managed. It's that I know these people, and I witnessed their refusal to speak up on their own behalf, even despite obvious discomfort and refusal to interrogate each other's patterns and needs before recreating cycles of old drama ad nauseum, and history has made it very clear that, sooner or later, someone is going to get burned. Kankri blinks once, twice. His eyes dart just for a second to the plate. Don't go drawing false equivalencies. You weren't planning on it. Mostly because they are false equivalencies, and sometimes phrasing is just phrasing, but you watch as Kankri connects some dots anyways. He swallows something down. Sure, I wouldn't expect that of you. Silence ticks by for a moment. Realize in that split second that you may both be running the same calculation and find yourself in the heady predicament of being on the other side of the counter. He's been wrong about, you think maybe a lot, or not wrong exactly, whatever version of well-intentioned with bad results that distinguishes the degree of culpability he legitimately has here. Okay, now you're doing it too. But he's not wrong that you do have something in common. You both usher conversations to an ending you'd both rather direct than act. I think dramaturgy is a little closer for the record. Whoops, there you go again, being all external with the internal monologue. Kankri sighs, pressing his palms tight against the meat of his legs and dragging downwards. Then, the heels of his hands reach his knees. He speaks. I do want to acknowledge that it is overstepping a bit to make offhand comments of the nature I've been making. As you said, they're your friends as well. I can understand why it might be a little bit aggravating to hear someone speak less than well of them. Less than well is a little gentler, but you let him finish anyway. I really do want to indicate, whatever you may have taken from my remarks, I don't bear them any. You're still on the let him finish train, but you maybe don't control your expressions as well as your tongue. He sees something flicker and switches course. I do still enjoy them, most of the time, in a social way, unbounded from my preferred role. Trust me, contrary to the impression I seem to have been giving, I do know what it looks like to be in relationships that are entirely founded on corrective measures. Well, you can't exactly pretend your record on complaining about / judging nominal friendships is squeaky clean. And you say carefully, he got here first. You're hearing about their dynamics secondhand, and as history's taught you, commenting on relationships you've only barely dipped your toes into is not the move. Maybe, ironically, you both got a little carried away with reacting. Maybe the moderator needs a moderator. Kankri's eyes widen a little at that. Not dramatically, but like he's really pondering that one. You've brushed on something there, I think. I mean, it is roughly what I've been getting at this whole time. It's rare that I think either of us encounters someone at the same level of experience. Oh. Even if our methodologies bound to have evolved in different directions. In light of that, I might look forward to some collaborative efforts. Not that I expect to completely rewire your preferred practice, obviously, nor you mine, for the record. Think of it like peer review. Nothing so drastic as reading DMs, obviously. That would be a little unethical without the consent of the third, fourth, etc. parties involved. But if, say, either of us were encountering situations which might benefit from another set of eyes and ears, we could do this again? Not literally all of this, obviously. Honestly, most of this could have been handled in an agree-mail, but maybe in an in-person visit from time to time as well, assuming mutual interest and logistic possibility. Like a gossip session? The look on his face makes you quickly contextualize that as a talk about your day gossip, not a talk shit gossip. Dialogue. I think the word you're looking for is dialogue. In spite of everything we've just discussed, every night I try to forget Miriam got to you first. That
actually sounds pretty nice. You let yourself sit with the idea for a second. It really, really does. He has the benefit of context and history, you have the outsider perspective and the scrappy underdog origin story, all the makings of a dynamic duo if you play your cards right. You don't think you're really the person to take Kankri to task for the desire to treat friendship like a garden for you to tend, not without feeling like a massive, raging hypocrite about it. But maybe with some mutual oversight, there's something to be said about being able to spot flaws with camera you'd never find in a mirror. It's not a solution by a long shot, but then this whole problem really stems from treating people like problems to be solved in the first place. At the end of the day, you both have the most important ingredient of all: investment. Hilarious. But I agree. I think I'd find that quite workable. So would you. You have some dishes to do now, don't you? Kangary's glance to the side confirms that he was half hoping the chore would go away if neither of you brought it up, or maybe hoping to slink his way back to do it himself, once he had steered you neatly upstairs. I was leaving the pan to soak. Ah, so the plan was secret chores without you. Purim has taught you better guest manners than that. No one said that, but, well, I figured I could hop back downstairs once you're engrossed in a little reading or something and make quick work of it. So, not secret chores without you, but him doing the chores without you, secretly. Kankri clears his throat in the universally understood language of, you may have a point, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. More or less. Not the world's most equitable division of labor. Kankri makes another universal sound of, I'm agreeing with you, but continuing to hate it. You know, it's some really unpleasant work, what we just agreed to. Nah, not really. If the pan has been soaking this whole time, it should honestly be pretty quick work. The butter didn't burn that badly. Oh, no, I actually meant. He gestures between the two of you. I was actually referring to this whole peer review arrangement. Deeply unpleasant. Is that just me? Addendum, actually, really difficult work. Unpleasant implies dissatisfaction with your presence, which, not to overstep here, is far from the truth. Still doesn't make it any easier to swallow the inevitable challenges of this mutual moderation mission, but the work has never been easy, and the legs of life's metaphorical omniscuttle march on. You were critiquing my suggested division of labor, right? You go implement that. He nods over his shoulder in a way that clearly translates his words into, okay, fine, let's do the dishes. Peer review it is. Yay! Yes! Oh, wonderful. Okay. I guess that's the end of stream. Fuck. I went into this to be like, oh, that stupid little bitch Kankri, but like, oh. My heart has been touched a little bit. I've warmed up to him. And his wordy attitude. I do kind of wish we went anywhere with his comment about like, isn't that a girl thing? Because there is definitely like, Kankri has a lot of misogyny. I mean, if you read Homestuck, it's very blatantly there. If you agree with Kankri when he says anything about matriarchy or patriarchy, I think you just need to sit with that and like, you're just wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry. You're just wrong. But yeah, it was fun though. Very fun. I've been endeared to this version of Kankri against my will. um, my mouth is very cottony and dry, but I did enjoy doing all that reading, even though it, is at great physical cost to me. I really hope he does not have, I hope reading all of that Kankri dialogue has no further impact on my own lexicon, but, we'll see. Or I guess you guys won't see, only Y-Modem will see. The people who have to put up with me every day will see if I start becoming just an absolute pain in the ass to read. Alright, that was a wonderful 1.5 hours. Good night.